This week in games, Xbox lays off 650 employees, Annapurna Interactive resigns entirely, and the PlayStation 5 Pro is $700. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 217. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Hello, people.
Okay, very good. Connor, how's your week been, friend?
It's been good. I've played games, and I've worked. I went to work.
Good. Oh, good for you. I'm glad you went to work. You know,
Didn't go to school.
I went to school.
I know you
went
did.
to school and to work and a bunch of other stuff. It's been a little crazy of a week for me, and it looks like the next few weeks are going to be crazy too. But you know, you got to hustle, got to work through these things, got to make it all work. So hopefully, we can keep the content up as I am, struggling through all of this. But ladies and gentlemen, of course, this is the Two Penny Gamescast. Each week, me and Connor come to you with the nerdy news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two topics, two pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. Of course, this week is a heavy review week, ladies and gentlemen. Both Astrobot and Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 reviews are up and live on the channel. You will see the Warhammer review at the end of this episode, so stick around for that, or just go ahead and jump over to youtube.com/@TwoPennyGames, where you can catch both Astrobot and Warhammer broken out separately. And to see our thoughts and opinions about all of that. So make sure you go and you click on those things because it's a really good time. Phil joined me for Astrobot. I was here talking to you about Warhammer. It's a good time. And I really recommend you listen and let us know what you think about those games, each individually.
You don't get a break.
Me?
No, you don't get a break.
No,
today.
you got a break. You got to go chill for 20, 30 minutes while me and Phil nerded out about Astrobot. And then, but now you're back.
I am.
And we're here to talk about the nerdy news you need to know. Of course, you can get this show every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@TwoPennyGames, or mainstream podcast services of your choice. You can also watch us live record all of our podcasts over at twitch.tv/TwoPennyGames, Monday afternoon/evening time. It's different every week, so always make sure you hit that notification bell so that you know when we go live. And make sure you hit the notifications on YouTube and Spotify's and all those things so you know when new episodes are posted every single week. Connor, let's go ahead and get into it, my friend. Bit of a heavy week this week. A lot going on this week. So we're going to dive into some of it, break it all down, dive into more of it, break it all down. Let the cycle repeat itself. Let's go ahead and start with this first topic of the day. Your first penny, my friend.
Well, we got an article from Deadline. 24 Annapurna Interactive staffers resign as plans to spin off division fall apart. This is from Anthony D'Alessandro. 24 Annapurna Interactive staffers have left the company as plans for the Megan Ellison studio to spin off the division with the former department's president, Nathan Gary, fell apart. If the spinoff had gone through, Annapurna Interactive would have remained focused on indie games. The Annapurna Interactive division remains operational, we hear, with some staffers in place. There are plans to staff back up. Last week, it was reported that Gary left the company along with heads of gaming, Deborah Mars and Nathan Vela. Hector Sanchez, who launched the division in 2016, departed and then returned prior to the trio's exits, but was named president of Interactive and New Media. Quote, Annapurna Interactive wouldn't exist without Megan's singular support of these stories, which weren't being told anywhere else in gaming, Sanchez said in a statement. She saw something almost a decade ago that no other backer we talked to did. Every conversation we've had with our development partners this week has reinforced the decision to come back and work alongside Megan to support our artists and our entire existing slate of games, end quote. Annapurna boss Megan Ellison said in a statement obtained by Deadline, quote, our top priority is continuing to support our developer and publishing partners during this transition. We're committed to not only our existing slate of games, but also expanding our presence in the interactive space as we continue to look for opportunities to take a more integrated approach to linear and interactive storytelling across film and TV, gaming, and theater. The library of Annapurna interactive games include third-person cat adventure Stray, What Remains of Edith Finch, Outer Wilds, Silent Hill Townfall, and Neon White, among several others. Stray sold several millions of units in its first month of release, as well as nabbing gaming awards.
Okay.
Very weird story.
This was unexpected.
Yeah.
So, Annapurna, most of the staff resigned, all at the same time, immediately after a deal fell through to spin off Annapurna Interactive so that they can have independence from Annapurna as a whole, right? Annapurna Interactive, if you don't know, as we said at the end of that article there, is responsible for publishing a lot of really great indie titles. I would say they are like the second best or arguably the best indie publisher to date outside of a Devolver Digital. And so very, very, very important to the indie market Annapurna is. So this has left a lot of indie devs kind of hanging, going, hey man, we got a deal. What's going on with our publishing now? And so I imagine Annapurna is scrambling to find staff to continue that work and get those games out. I hope the best for them. You know, they didn't ask for any of this, so I hope the best for them and that their games still find success and make it onto all the platforms and all the marketing places that they're supposed to be. I'm sure this decision was not easy for the Annapurna Interactive staff. I'm sure it would have been easier to just kind of keep the day job and keep business as usual as a known brand. I'm fascinated to see what happens next. This, I imagine, is far from the first time we will hear this story. I imagine we're going to see a new publishing branch with all of these people turn up. Now, will they have the resources right away? I don't know. So will they be able to publish the same? Will they be able to publish the games on the same sizes that we have seen before? Will we see them on the same showcases that we've seen them before? I don't know. But it'll be very interesting to whatever happens to this group next going forward. But I do imagine whatever does happen in the future, they will find success because they've already had a lot of success. And if I'm an indie developer and I know Megan and I know, what were the other people who were named in this? If I know Megan and I know Gary and I know Deborah Mars and all these people, Nathan Vela, Hector Sanchez, all of these people, I know these names, right? I'm going to go work with them again in the future, right? Because they did right by me in the publishing of XYZ games, so I'm going to go work with them again. But any games that have deals with Annapurna right now, of course, are going to have to fulfill those contracts. So we're going to see a slate of games still by Annapurna Interactive, but not necessarily the Annapurna that we know and are familiar with. I'm curious as to the effect of this on all sides.
Yeah, I remember it mentions at the end that Bloomberg initially reported on this story. I believe it was Jason Schreier.
It broke it, I believe. Yeah, that's the first story that I saw.
Yeah, and even he was like, I'll probably have more details a little bit down the line, a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
There's more to this story.
Yeah.
I like
what
some
happened?
Weird. Yeah, because you would think that somebody would break at a certain point. If not the staffers, Annapurna themselves.
Yeah.
These are people that were able to help carry their games forward, and so it makes sense that they'd want to keep them the best they can. But they certainly didn't capitulate. You know,
it's wild. It's
a
wild story. Do me a favor, scoot to your right just a little bit. Perfect. It's doing a thing where I can't control your camera, and you're just at a weird angle, but that's fine. So this is a very weird deal. The fact that it just failed to spin off is interesting. They didn't want, I guess Annapurna doesn't want its interactive branch to go anywhere. Yeah. So they decided, well, fuck you, we're just going to go anyway. So it's just going to be so fascinating to see what happens next. Do they come back? Do they successfully spin off on their own? Do they create a new publishing branch in the space? That would be interesting. That would drive some competition. That would be really interesting. So you may see a wave of push of a bunch of really cool creative indie games that you would not have seen otherwise. So this could help strengthen the indie game market, or this could hurt it. We don't know yet, but I'm just so fascinated to see what comes next. So this is a side of the industry that you have to sit back and it's not as sexy to talk about, as some of the other topics that we have coming up here on this show this week. But it's certainly one of the more fascinating ones. This is a story that the ramifications of this will be felt quickly. You will feel these ramifications within the next calendar year. And then on top of that, you potentially could see a drastically different side of the industry in 5 years,
And that's the thing. I think we're now officially entering into a new era, an uncertain one, because obviously we've had the layoffs, and the current state of game development can't seem to sustain itself.
Yeah.
Even when you have games that are successful, we bring it up all the time. Hi-Fi Rush, think of another,
Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII, Dead Space remake.
Point is,
I don't know which one you're fishing for, so
I can't remember either. But with so many people losing their jobs nowadays, and video game development getting longer, and that seemingly being the trajectory that people were going on, but now we have Astrobot came into play, and it's seeming to change things up, knowing that you don't need to spend all of these, years and years and years making one game that has high fidelity when you could just make a less fidelity game and just plays extremely well and takes less to develop. You also have weird situations like this happening. Game developers had sounded the alarm that there were going to be more studio closures this year, which has happened so far. Obviously, people have always talked about a recession in the gaming market, which hasn't happened in quite some time. Something's going to give. And whereas at one point I would have kind of said, people are saying who know better than me that there's going to be a recession. Sure, there's going to be a recession soon. Now I don't know. This seems like a different span of events.
That's a more hopeful take than I
it's
have
more hopeful,
on this.
certainly.
I don't know about that. I think this is just going to sort of energize the indie market. On the grand scale AAA market, I think we're still going to fall victim to a lot of the things that we've already fallen victim to. I think Astrobot is a clear message to the business side of the AAA game market, especially with how Concord failed. But this, I think, is a smaller thing. The difference is that the times when you queue into a Summer Game Fest, to a Jeff Keighley stream, to an opening night live, those types of events, and you see indie game after indie game after indie game, you would be remiss, or sometimes Nintendo Direct goes on a weird tangent and shows you 3 farming simulator games, right?
Right.
But I think this is more of a we are going to establish more space for indie game development and more reasons to care about indie games. I think you're going to see more cases like Stray. I think you're going to see more cases like What Remains of Edith Finch and things like that. And there's just going to be more space for more devs at this point, because Annapurna Interactive still has its reputation. It just doesn't have the people that it used to.
Yeah, it's less this story I know is more just like on its own going to be affecting the indie industry.
Yeah.
I'm more talking about this along with all of the other weird elements of things we haven't really seen quite before, all cohesively seen together as being indicative of some kind of weird, abnormal change. It's less this thing being the cause of it, or the main cause even, and just being a part of a whole.
Well, we are in a great we're in an era of great change throughout the industry. It's been mostly negative, but life has a way of kind of balancing itself out. At least that's as few times as I get optimistic. That's my optimistic point of view, is that things will balance out and you'll see the good come out of all of this bad eventually, right? I think that's just kind of how humanity works. We're stuck up on this one thing for a long time, and we all just kind of get tired and want to move on and not talk about these things anymore. Yeah, I think you see that in American politics as well. It feels like we're tired of talking about the same shit again and again. So it feels like we're about to enter a new wave of something else.
There's 2 ways to kind of think of that in terms of the broad term. I think of 2 different things. One is a quote from Martin Luther King, because it is a good quote. It's kind of a contested quote because you can debate how true it is, which is the moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. And then there's also the obviously things that meaning like things will get better. Even if it takes a while, people identify what the issues are, and there's a break at some point. There's that, and there's also what I've seen referred to as, and you know what word I'm saying, chaos theory. Of how literally how just like things just happen in a vacuum. Sometimes they'll set a chain of events. Sometimes they won't. They'll just be this big event that's isolated, and things just happen from left to right and this and that, good and bad. Depends on what kind of thought you have on how the world works. But it could go. Those are the ways it could go.
Yeah, I just think the change you're talking about is more grand scale, and I think the industry is not as big as that. So I think you will see a change happen in the next probably 5 years, you'll see a change. And this could be a catalyst of that. I think certainly on the indie side, how the indie game dev market operates could potentially change drastically from this in the next 3 to 5, I'm just curious as to how this affects people in the next 1 to 2 years, because it leaves a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of hanging. And speaking of leaving a lot of people hanging, moving on to our second topic of the day, another downer story and sort of a continuation of what we've been talking about as events unfold in the industry. We have our second topic of the day. Your second penny, Connor. Take it away.
Oh, I get the bummer ones today.
Yeah.
Video Game Chronicle. This is from Andy Robinson. Microsoft is cutting another 650 staff from its gaming teams.
Fucking hell.
Yep. We'll talk about that. But first, the story. As first reported by GameFile, Microsoft's head of gaming, Phil Spencer, shared the news with employees in a company-wide email on Thursday. Quote, as part of aligning our post-acquisition team structure and managing our businesses, we have made the decision to eliminate approximately 650 roles across Microsoft Gaming, mostly corporate and supporting functions to organize our business for long-term success, Spencer wrote. Throughout our team's history, we have had great moments and we have had challenging ones. Today is one of the challenging days. I know that going through more changes like this is hard, but even in the most trying times, this team has been able to come together and show one another care and kindness as we continue to fire people, to continue delivering for our players, end quote. Spencer claimed that the cuts would result...
What are you delivering? Anyways, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Spencer claimed that the cuts would result in the cancellation of no games, devices, or experiences. Experience. We gotta make sure we're cultivating those experiences, Tavin.
Right. All right. So
yeah,
let me get this right. This year alone, Xbox has laid off 2,500 people in total right now, if I have that number right. Last year, Microsoft, the entire corporation of Microsoft, laid off 10,000 people at once. A lot of those numbers came from Xbox as well. So in the last 2 years, we've had multiple thousands of waves of people getting laid off in different waves. At some point, Connor, do we need to start talking about Xbox like how we talk about Embracer?
I think the time has come.
I hate to say it, but I think so as well. Now, my heart goes out to these employees and workers who got laid off this week. I'm so sorry that happened. That sucks, and I hope you find a way to land on your feet. It's from this. It sounds like it's mostly the corporate and sort of like making the cogs in the machine continue to work side of the business. So will you see a difference on the game development side? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't seem like that. But you never know how this could affect. And again, I just fail to... Xbox continues to fail to instill confidence in me as a consumer and me as an observer of their business that they are on the right path to success.
And you have the closing of the studios like Tango Gameworks, Arcane... you had all those layoffs that you were talking about before. You have kind of the dipping numbers of the Game Pass. It's not exactly. It's clearly not what they can rely on entirely.
Game Pass isn't dipping; it's not growing.
It's not growing.
Is the problem? Yeah.
And just bad decision after bad decision. I'll mention it because it is important to say no pay cuts from these top figures guaranteed. Yep. Both on Microsoft's end in general, and I know those people make bank, but also its gaming division. Yep. Bill Spencer,
Sarah Bond,
Matt Booty. Yeah.
At least they're not saying they're taking these pay cuts.
Then they would say it.
They would say if they could. Yeah, it would be a good look on them if they did take those cuts and if they told us about it.
There was literally precedent of that happening with Nintendo, and there being only praise for that.
And then wouldn't you know it, Nintendo's been pretty solid through this whole time. I'm sure they've had some layoffs, but it hasn't been nearly to the level of everybody else in the field. And
they went through a long period of time where they weren't doing all that great. Yeah. Nintendo, one of the big players, and they still didn't lay off people en masse. Even with those pay cuts that the CEOs took, there still could have been layoffs, but there was none. Microsoft is one of the biggest in the industry right now as well. Mm-hmm. Despite them not being as successful as like a Sony in this space, they're still successful, very successful. They have the Xbox side, which even if that's not as comparable to the PlayStation side of things, they also have the in on PC. Windows is one of the main operating systems in the United States, probably the world. Without going to exact numbers.
But I mean, this is what we covered when they laid off I forget the number, 1,200 people last time that we mentioned something like that. And there was the conversation happening that the Activision Blizzard King acquisition was too big for Xbox's britches. So Microsoft came in, and this has been Microsoft gaming, not Xbox gaming anymore. And it just continues to feel that way. It feels cold and corporate. It feels like, hey, we're going to do everything we can to make a buck now, and we're not going to care too much about the little guy anymore.
Got to make our returns.
You know? And so I sit here, and I have to sit here and wonder, God, is Call of Duty really like your big, like you're just waiting on this meal ticket right now? You're just waiting and praying that Call of Duty delivers the sales and the revenue that it would take to stop the bleeding? Because Xbox has done nothing but bleed for the last year and a half. 2 years even. And so now you just have to sit here and wonder, what is the plan? Because y'all are just continuously cutting and cutting and cutting, and there doesn't seem to be any stopping of the cutting. You're going to tell me your math guys aren't like figuring out the exact number you should cut, and why aren't you just cutting that number from the jump?
And that was kind of what we were talking about with one of the last layoffs. I think it was the 1,200 number.
Yeah.
We justified it because it was like, okay, they did have the big acquisition. These things are going to happen.
I think that was the one before the last one.
See, it gets so, because at a certain point, you go from there to, oh, you're still cutting people?
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing it again?
Yes.
Maybe it's not just because you needed to make redundancy cuts.
There's no round of layoffs that I have felt is acceptable, but this one is absolutely, like, I'm going to put extra emphasis on this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are not running your company correctly because you're losing all of these people who were working for so long and so hard for you. You're closing all of these studios that developed so much talent and developed so many great games that didn't deserve all of this. God, I can't believe we lost Arcane. That's so fucking frustrating. Or at least one of the Arcane guys, you know? Yeah, man, Microsoft is in a tricky situation. Xbox is in a precarious situation, and I don't think Call of Duty is enough to justify it. But of course, we will have to see. And speaking of justifying decisions over here, Connor, we're going to move on to our third topic of the day, one that quite a few of you are probably here for. My first penny of the day: Sony officially reveals PS5 Pro during PlayStation 5 technical presentation. The mid-gen starts now. This is from Wesley Yinpool over at IGN. Of course, we talked about this last week. We recorded on Mondays. The presentation was on Tuesday. The episode is released on Tuesday. The episode was released like literally hours before the presentation. We kind of predicted the price point on that episode as well. But now we have confirmation. So, Sony has finally announced the worst kept secret in video games, the PlayStation 5 Pro. It costs $700, doesn't come with a disc drive or a what do they call it? A kickstand or a
stand.
Yeah. And launches this November. PS5 lead architect Mark Cerny confirmed the mid-gen refresh during a PS5 technical presentation in which he said the new console lets Sony give the players the high frame rates they prefer. The GPU is much larger, ray tracing is improved, and there's custom hardware for machine learning, PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, PSSR. Design-wise, the PlayStation 5 Pro lines up with the leaked information and images that recently hit the internet. It looks a lot like a PS5 Slim, but with stripes along either side. Check out how the PS5 Pro looks in the slideshow of images, yada, yada, yada. In a post on the PlayStation blog, Hideki Nishino,
Yeah.
CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment Platform Business Group, outlined the PS5 Pro's performance features. I'm going to go through this. I don't understand a lot of this talk. So,
for you tech heads out there.
Yeah, this is for y'all. Upgraded GPU. With PS5 Pro, we are upgrading to a GPU that has 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console and 28% faster memory. Excuse me.
Oh.
Overall, this enables up to 45% faster rendering for gameplay, making the experience much smoother. Advanced ray tracing. We've added even more powerful ray tracing that provides more dynamic reflection and refraction of light. This allows the rays to be cast as at double and at times triple the speeds of the current PS5 console. AI-driven upscaling. We're also introducing PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, PSSR, an AI-driven upscaling that uses a machine learning based technology to provide super sharp image clarity by adding an extraordinary amount of detail. Sony also confirmed the PS5 Pro price at $699.99 USD. And then there's a bunch of other denominations and costs on there. It's more expensive in other countries, Connor. With a release date of November 7th, 2024. It includes a 2 terabyte SSD, a DualSense wireless controller, so the normal DualSense controller, and a copy of Astro's Playroom pre-installed. The vertical stand is sold separately.
Astro's Playroom, a PS5.
That's the same thing that is on every PlayStation 5. Yeah, that when you first boot up the console.
It seems weird that they'd be like, we're doing it again here for your Pro console. Can you throw in like a more substantial game as well as that?
It should probably just be Astrobot, right? Like,
right, that too.
I don't know. Okay, so this is pretty much exactly what we thought it was going to be, right? A more powerful, souped-up, faster PlayStation 5 at a ridiculous price point. Now, the price point has been a big point of contention online. People are really upset about how it doesn't come with a disc tray and a vertical stand. Hey, guys, I'm going to just let you know now, the games you are buying aren't the games. It's just a key to play the games. You have to install the game from the disc onto your hard drive anyway. It's how it's kind of always, or it's kind of how it's always been throughout the PlayStation 5 generation, and like the last half of the PS4 generation was that way as well. Outside of if you are living in a area that has bad to slow to terrible internet, like your internet can't sustain it, you kind of need to get on board. Physical media is dying. It's just going to happen. It's inevitable, right?
It'll never die. It'll minimize to the point where it's not the main thing, but it'll always exist.
I would argue it's already not the main thing. Didn't we just read a
main
story on this podcast a few weeks ago about how Capcom games, 90% of them are digital sales?
Main thing in the concept of when people think of a video game, they still think of a disc.
I don't think they do. I think they think of loading up a Steam page, or they load up the PlayStation Store. I don't think people think about. I mean, that's why GameStop's dying. Like, I don't think people think about going to the stores to buy anything anymore. I think everything is all digital now. They think of it like Netflix or Disney Plus and things like that. You know, except you have to like buy it instead of subscribe to a subscription. Except sometimes you do have to subscribe to a subscription. So like, there's that. But if you live in that part of the country where your internet's not good enough to download games at a reasonable rate, right, and you still want to buy your games physically, this isn't for you.
It's for people who have money to waste.
Yes, it is. Like, point blank, it just is. It's for people who have money to waste. Now, I'm not getting this. This does not provide a substantial enough upgrade to me for that price point. Now, this is definitely a substantial upgrade. Their main selling point kind of is finding the middle ground between performance mode and fidelity mode. So do you want your game to look really pretty, or do you want it to run at a higher frame rate? This is sort of finding a middle ground where you don't really have to choose anymore. You can still get really pretty games at 60 frames per second. The thing about it to me is I don't feel like we've tapped into the full potential and power of the PlayStation 5 yet. I think that's due to the game dev cycles taking too long, and they have not been developing that many games for only the PlayStation 5.
I mean, we recently had news break of the PS6 kind of starting to come into play now.
Yeah. Sony has put in an order for AMD 6 or something like that. But for PlayStation 6 consoles, their focus is going to be on backwards compatibility. That's the only news there, is that, hey, guess what? We're still doing the backwards compatibility thing, which they should do. I don't think we'll ever get another generation of consoles where we don't do backwards compatibility.
Yeah, it's kind of an old style of how you do things.
Connor, you watched the presentation as well, I assume, yes?
No.
Why
because I watched everything that had to do with its specs. That's all that matters.
None of those things. Yeah.
None of those. All that stuff that's for like, it's a 9-minute sequence. So I was like, I can read every single detail of this that's relevant on a page. You know, they could have easily, if it wasn't PlayStation, the big guy, they would have, like, most companies for something like this would have been like, hey, we're releasing a new product. Here's this, little paper.
Connor, the price point has been the big deal about it.
Yeah.
Do you have any interest in a PlayStation 5 Pro?
No. I barely have interest in it. I question why we would need a PS6 at all, seeing as how technology is kind of like.
Well, we're only halfway through the generation, Connor, so yeah.
But there haven't been many, big leaps in this generation at all. It's just been kind of like.
Well, I did see the diagram of, like, you're going to see less and less leaps visually because it's something that, like, you start with 8-bit and then you move on to 16, 24, 32, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they did that with the triangles, the number of triangles you can have per thing. We hit the point where even if you double the amount of triangles, you can't see the difference anymore because the eye just is not that perceptive.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. But then it depends on what type of screen you're using, monitor, that type of thing, refresh rates and all that.
And that's exactly the thing, because with that in mind, you now have them doing the PS5 Pro, and then you have them doing the PS6. So is their old model of, doing their, big new console, their halfway console, and then their next big leap forward with their next console? It doesn't seem like that.
I don't think there's I don't think there's big leaps forward anymore. I don't think there's no point in putting a number on it anymore. It's just the new thing, right? Game consoles are cell phones now. It's just now we use instead of getting one every year, you get one every 3 years.
Yeah.
And then they just put the word pro at the end of it, and then they're going to hit you again with another upgrade in 3 years. Now, do I believe the PlayStation 6 is going to be $700 minimum, like a lot of the extremist world is ending views have been? No, I don't think. I think the PlayStation 6 will be probably $500 like the PlayStation 5. I do not expect the overall price in these things to go up. But I'm not saying it's not possible. It's certainly possible. Sony's going to look at the sales of this thing. I think obviously they've got the message of hey, nobody really wants this, or a lot of people are upset about this price. But I think they understood that a lot of people aren't going to buy this day one because a lot of them are just going to buy the normal model anyway if they don't already have one, right?
Yeah.
This is a niche item for a niche audience. This is for people who want who still want the convenience of a video game console, but they want as high end as they can get it, right? Mm-hmm. So. And they want it attached to their living room TV, not their computer desk, right? Mm-hmm. That's who these people. That's what this is for. It's to satisfy that crowd. And if you look at the stats, and this is Digital Foundry people who know who they're talking about, is what I'm about to say. If you look at the stats, not the most outrageous price point for the statistics that you're getting out of this thing, for the power that you're getting out of this machine. I see a lot of conjecture of well, at this rate, just buy a PC. Sure, but to get that level of power, the GPU alone is going to cost you about $500. That's not including the rest of the PC that you have to buy. In all truth, to get that level of power that you're getting with the PlayStation 5 Pro, you're probably going to have to pay double the price than the PlayStation 5 Pro, right? To get that level of power if you want that.
Yeah.
And if you want that, you probably already have that. If you don't, just get this. I get it. It's not for everybody, but if you want it, get it. If you don't, then get the fucking normal one. Stop bitching. Nobody's making you buy it. But $700 is an outrageous amount to ask for a console.
And to that point, it's more you would say that there's not going to be any major leap forwards with consoles, and the PS6 would be around 605. It would be 500. I just don't think that's reasonable for two reasons. Corporate greed. It's been very clear that they just want to raise as much prices as they can. But also, if the whole bit about there being a PS6 being more upgraded than anything we have right now, why would that cost less than the PS5 Pro, which you would think kind of instinctually would be less advanced?
Because everything's going to work off of the base model, not the last model. You understand?
Yeah.
So the PS6 is a major upgrade in comparison to the PlayStation 5. It's not a major upgrade in comparison to the PlayStation 5 Pro. Mm-hmm. The PlayStation 5 Pro is punching above its weight class right now. The PlayStation 6 will be punching at its weight class. It won't be punching down. It'll be punching at its weight class. Switch 2 is going to be punching down, right? It is a underpowered machine. It just will be, right? That's how Nintendo works. PlayStation says this is the general median of power that game developers are going to take advantage of right now, and we are going to capitalize on that. PlayStation 5 Pro is equivalent to PCs that punch up. They punch up. They shoot higher. That's why they're more expensive, is because they're doing more than what the current model of technology calls for. That's just kind of how it works. Yeah, I'm sorry. The PlayStation, there is no... I shouldn't say that. There is a world where this happens. But if I were a betting man, I would say the PlayStation 6 is not $700.
We betting?
I'll bet that right now.
No, my bet.
We're in the white. I'll shake that hand right now.
My bet wouldn't be for $700. Mine would be increased to like $650, $600. I think they wouldn't.
I think it caps.
It
caps at $600.
Mm-hmm.
There is zero chance not including tax. There is zero chance that the sale shelf price will be above $599.99.
But $600 right now is for the disc version, and that's just with the disc included, like a disc drive.
Yeah.
This new one would have,
Is that true? Or is it 500?
No, it's 600. No, because it's 500 for the base.
Isn't it 400 for the base?
Without
a disc drive?
Before. We've had this exact conversation.
Yeah, I know, and I think you were wrong last time too.
Yeah, I was wrong last time, but 400 seems too cheap for just a base.
I'm pretty sure I spent 400 on my PlayStation 5.
That's probably what it is then. I will double check. It is 500.
For the disc.
No. Yeah, because 449 for digital. That's weird. Best PlayStation.
I think that's a slim version. It might have gone up.
A slim. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be 400. Yeah.
So.
Well.
Which again, the slim is a minor upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
It can do a little bit more than the base model, but it's almost not worth mentioning, right? So they just charge you $50 more to charge you $50 more, right? Yeah, it's slimmer.
Fair.
And for those who are interested in size and format of the PlayStation 5 Pro, it is as slim as the Slim, but it's bigger. It's longer. It's as long as the normal PlayStation 5.
I remember when the Slim came out, we compared how big it is compared to the base model, and it's only slightly smaller.
Yeah.
So it's
funny. Much slimmer, but it's just a little bit smaller, long wise, you know, whereas this one is back to the same length, but kept the slimness. So good for you, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't think this is going to sell like hotcakes, but no, I also don't think they care if it does or not. They know who they're selling it to. It's not like they're not ramping up production for this.
Yeah.
To sell the normal model. Surely they know what they're going to get out of this. And they know that there are people out there who just want the best version of what they can get.
I think they kind of know with those mid-gen consoles, they're going to make a buck. On some level.
Yeah.
So they're just fuck it,
the
go
PS4
for it.
Pro obviously was successful, or else they wouldn't be doing it again. So obviously it was a success. That was less expensive than this. So we're going to see how much this is going to be. But yeah,
and more substantial, seeing as how some people's PS4s might have been starting to chug along by that point.
That's my argument against this, is the PlayStation 4, by the time the Pro came out, the PlayStation 4 was kind of struggling. Mm-hmm. It was getting loud, the vents were going real hard, it would kind of stutter at times, this, that, and the third. And then the Pro kind of fixed that, right? My PS5 works fine. It doesn't get that hot. The vent, I never hear it really. Yeah, so I don't see the need for this for me personally. Would I like the visual upgrade? Yeah, sure. I would like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to be as beautiful as it can be and still run at 60 frames a second. I would like that, yeah. But not for $700. I'll take my shitty resolution and 60 frames. Thank you very much. Yep. They also gave it the stat that the overwhelming majority of people play in performance mode. I think it was what, 3/4 of players or something like that.
I think
it was 70%.
Yeah,
so, it was something crazy like that.
Yep. I guess last thing I'll say, to correct some people who might have saw it on Twitter/X.com, people were bringing up comparisons of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the new one, the Pro, and the old one. And it was definitively the older one looked better. But it was a weird thing where the image they were using was
they were also critiquing because it looked like they whitewashed
Aerith that too,
a little bit. Yeah. So
whitewashing a white woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, I know.
She's not white though, right? She's Japanese. She just is just really fair skinned.
Oh, she's definitely white.
She's white.
Aerith Gainsborough versus Tifa Lockhart, and her name is
these are just names.
Tifa might be
these are just names. Cloud is Japanese. Tifa's Japanese.
I guess it's hard.
They're just very, very fair skinned.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to say.
Yeah. It's that weird thing because the Japanese make them look like white people, but they are Japanese.
Yeah,
it's that weird thing that Square Enix,
a lot
Japanese
of
devs,
anime do that in general.
Yeah, anime does that in general, where they make it look as white as possible, but still Japanese. It's weird. I don't know why. I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Or appealing to a different market or something. Or I don't know what the cultural reason is for that.
But that image was from the showcase, the reveal showcase when they were showing gameplay.
Yeah, it was it was the super high res announcement trailer versus actual gameplay.
Yeah.
So
there wasn't even pro footage on there. It was literally PS5 and pre-release.
Well, they didn't even use. Well, yeah, but yeah. Well, no, it was somebody on Twitter took images from
Yeah.
not the technical presentation.
Yes.
They took images from the announcement trailer and
PS5.
raw gameplay on PS5. The presentation used Rebirth on PS5 Pro.
Yeah, and the PS5, the regular version in game looked better than the showcase. Surprise, surprise. So there wasn't even like there was no element of the PS5 Pro in that image at all. Yet it was going around and people were kind of
The images that went viral.
Yeah.
But in the technical presentation, it did look better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't tell a difference in 90% of the things they were showing me. I'm going to chalk that up to YouTube compression watching on my phone. So, not exactly the best way to look at that. But I don't think they're like through YouTube. I don't think there's a good way. You have to be in person to see it.
Yeah.
And you have to have a good monitor to see it, right? I did notice it for The Last of Us Part 2, just because I know what Last of Us Part 2 looks and runs at. And so I was like, that's the right level of fidelity. But man, that's a lot more frames. There's a lot of frames going on right there. So like, I was, because I know what Last of Us looks like because it's at 30 frames. So I like when it was like 60 frames and still beautiful, I was like, oh shit, that looks great. Every other game, I was like, I can't fucking tell. Yeah. Ratchet and Clank, I couldn't tell. I was like, I don't
it's
know.
Ratchet. It looks like
Spider-Man 2, I couldn't tell. I was like, I don't know what's happening here. Like, so it is what it is. Yeah, I think the price it's a little too much. They probably should have gone $650. People would have been a little happier with that. But $700, whatever. I don't care about the disc drive. The vertical stand is what's weird to me.
Why
are you charging me another $20 for the vertical stand?
Something like that.
10, $20 for the vertical stand. That's where I'm like, all right, well now you're fucking nickel
you're
diming me,
cheapskate.
PlayStation. What the fuck is going on here? So yeah, that part's wild, but the disc drive, I don't care.
When your games get taken away from the Sony Gestapos, I'll still have mine.
This is my thing about the whole digital versus physical thing. All right, your game library will not suddenly disappear. Are there examples of games disappearing? Yes, there are. Individual examples, yes, there are.
You argued against yourself.
Listen, guess what? I can't play the Deadpool video game anymore. Oh, no.
Oh, look at this elitist prick.
Oh, no.
This
I
guy
can't
talks
play Deadpool
about
anymore.
game preservation, and look at him now.
Listen, you should absolutely... Listen. The game preservation angle, absolutely. I believe in that 100%. There should be a way that we should be able to play and buy all video games, right?
This collection.
On modern hardware, not having to buy old shit, right? On modern hardware, I should be able to play and buy anything. Like, my game library isn't that at risk. Like, I'm not suddenly going to lose the rights to God of War Ragnarok and be able to no longer play God of War Ragnarok. Are they willing to take it away? Yeah. Or, like, are they able to? Yeah, they are. But they're not going to.
PT, where are you? Come back, please. Hopefully he kept it installed. Well, Tavin, I hope for your sake they do get rid of your game library.
That plays into my example. Listen, PT was a great experience, and it's a really cool little demo of what a horror game could be. But, like, nobody's reaching for PT anymore. Like, nobody cares. It's PT.
Sometimes games can be a small interactive experience. No longer.
Sometimes they can. Yes, sir.
Other people, see, we were able to enjoy it, so other people can't. They're blocked off. They are punished by
I think they'd be
Konami.
better off playing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which isn't going anywhere.
Not as good in terms of like presentation.
Biohazard?
Potential, yeah, I think
Pretty good.
Potential for PT.
Once you get
was so much
inside the
greater.
house, it's pretty good.
The PT potential was so much greater. I
Was
think
it?
I would have go with that. Yes, it was, because it had interesting storytelling mechanics, an
Did it?
interesting narrative. It's a Silent Hill game.
What was the
yeah.
narrative of PT?
It's a Silent Hill game made by Hideo Kojima.
Yeah,
There would have
that was it. That was the narrative.
That would have been. That's already setting
But
up a
guess
narrative.
what? We didn't get that game.
That's the point. That's why we didn't get it. So we have to be stuck with the thing that doesn't have narrative.
It wasn't because the game was digital. It was because Konami's a bunch of fucks.
I'm just saying. If they had like a little, hey guys, you have a little special disc edition, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Here's my other thing, Connor. Moving on and moving the subject forward. All right, is how many more generations are we actually getting hardware? That's the real question. Because eventually all of this is going to be digital. I jump over to what website is this? WindowsCentral.com by Jez Corden. As Sony reveals the PlayStation 5 Pro, Xbox is quietly building a cloud gaming dominance that could see it lead a $40 billion industry in just 10 years. This is my point. And this is, I think, the best thing Microsoft has going for it right now, is they are building a foundation of cloud streaming digital services. Now, how you get it right now is through a $20 a month subscription service through Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is not a great model. That's a lot for just streaming games. You know what I'm saying? But we're getting there. I play games on my PlayStation Portal through Wi-Fi. It's not 1-to-1, but it's pretty damn close, you know? And we are slowly building to a point to where these hardware devices just are not necessary anymore. And once that happens, then it's all about the internet speeds. And in which case, then you will see, I think, development cycles improve because they are all building for one type of hardware.
I think at that point, that could happen, or it could be a massive failure. I mean, this is Xbox. This is Microsoft. They haven't had that great of a streak.
You're going to tell me in 15 years we're still going to be buying PlayStation boxes?
Very possibly, yeah. The main issue that you run up across, we've talked about this before, is internet access. You know,
I think you're a coward for not taking me on that deal that the PlayStation 6 is not going to be, what did I say? More than $600.
Hey,
it could be $600. I can see the $600. It will not be like $650. It will not be $700. It won't be.
Never underestimate greediness, Tavin. But I mean, the point is, in addition to that, it's like, how much better is this going to get? Is Microsoft going to be the people that lead it? You know, they in the gaming space haven't exactly been very innovative in quite a while now. And now we're supposed to trust them with the future of gaming. I think it's kind of bullshit. I think it's their talk of like, here's this new potential we have.
I think you're taking this way too seriously. It's not a matter of like, oh, they're the dominant force in gaming. I think they just have a leg up in what will inevitably be the standard. Inevitably, everything will be digital streaming in our lifetimes, Connor. Everything will be unless I die tomorrow. Everything will be all digital streaming through a stick that you plug into the back of your television. You know?
I think there'll always be a market for home consoles because some people just don't like the inherent idea of streaming. You know, I don't. And I'm not going to buy for it. You know,
that's because you grew up in an age where it didn't exist. You think these kids fucking want to get up and change a goddamn disc? No.
That's why.
And also, when was the last time you bought a DVD?
Tavin, that's a bad question to ask me.
You fucking nerd!
Very
you
recently.
You fucking nerd loser!
About a month ago?
What the fuck are you doing buying DVDs?
Well, technically it's Blu-ray, particularly Criterion collection of a film. Do you know what Criterion is, Tavin?
No,
it's got all the features, everything.
Cool.
It's literally director approved most of the time. It's the prime way to watch a film, Tavin, at home. Not getting that streaming.
Or you open up your app and you just watch whatever you want.
And then you blink and all of a sudden you're in Wall-E world. You're sitting in the chair, you're being drawn,
I don't
driven
think
around everywhere.
Happen. I think it's dramatic.
Hey, Wall-E is predicting the environment going bad. It's going bad. They're 1 for 1. They're 1 for 2. We've
been known that forever. Anyways, Connor, let's move on to our final topic of the day. Listen. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be patient. All right? And now I don't always like being patient, and neither do you, right? Sometimes I want the thing that I want, and I want it now, right? And this is an example of that. I take you to my second penny of the day. GameSpot.com. Konami confirms Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2, but not what's in it. This is from Blair Marnell. After releasing Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 last year for the modern consoles and PC, it was inevitable that Konami would eventually get around to a second volume. Now, Konami has confirmed that Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2 is on the way, but the MGS team remains exclusive about which games will be included. Via Eurogamer, Noriaki Akamura, the producer of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, briefly addressed Metal Gear Master Collection Volume 2 during a video about the production of the MGS3 remake. Akamura acknowledged that Volume 1 had issues at launch, and he indicated that the team is taking its time to ensure that Volume 2 has a smoother release. Quote, "Of course, we called the first one Volume 1, so we are making a Volume 2. That much is for sure," noted Akamura. Quote, "We're also worried about how Volume 1 had a pretty rough launch with all the issues. So we're going to do everything we can not to repeat that. But we just have to ask for everyone to give us time." Akamura did not answer fan questions as to which games will be featured in the collection, although he seemingly teased the inclusion of Metal Gear Solid 4 last month. To date, MGS 4 has never appeared on any platform except the PlayStation 3. Both parts of Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes, and Phantom Pain were available on multiple consoles and PC. Presumably, Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2 will include those titles, as well as the HD version of Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker that was ported to PS3 and Xbox 360. But until Konami confirms that lineup, we can only speculate.
Konami's on their bullshit, maybe.
No, this is a great quote. This is a great thing to hear. This is good news, right?
Yeah.
Now, I was hoping we were going to get Volume 2 this year. I think it would be a great lead up into Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, is to, here's part 1, here's part 2 of all the great games that you love and adore. It doesn't seem like that's the case. It looks like Snake Eater is coming. You know, it'll be upon us probably before March. It feels like that game is ready to go, and so they're just polishing. I hope they're just polishing.
Yeah.
And we are on our way to seeing hopefully a really faithful and really good remake. Metal Gear Solid is a tricky beast to handle, right? Because where do you see the future of this going, right? You package up all these games and you re-release them so that we have them forever, and then you remake a fan favorite version of it, but you stay as faithful as possible to it, right? I think those are pretty good calls so far, especially with the relationship that they have with Hideo Kojima. In terms of a Metal Gear Solid Volume 2 collection, I'd be really, really excited to see what's in store in that. I felt Volume 1 was a lackluster package. It was those games, again, which is great. They didn't run their best, which is disappointing. And there was no panache in the presentation. It was just a bunch of separate apps that you had to download to play each individual game. And even like on the PlayStation 5, when you scroll over to a game and it shows you artwork of the game and it fills up the whole screen, it was just the artwork of the collection, which felt lazy to me. So I would personally like a little bit more panache. I think you've already set the standard that they're separate apps. I would hope that at least like you do some cool artwork with those different apps and so forth. And I hope that the Volume 2 has bells and whistles, like Volume 1 did kind of have bells and whistles, with the inclusion of the original 2 Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snakes. It would be cool to throw in the NES versions of those games, which were not Kojima games. They were recreations by the States, and then Metal Gear 2 Snake's Revenge is a completely different Metal Gear 2. So I would hope that those games do kind of get sort of a repackaging as well. That would be kind of cool. On top of that, you assume there was 3 games in the last one. You assume there's probably going to be 3 games in the next one. Granted, these next 3 games are bigger than the last 3 games, so that's a little complicated, right? So I think it's undeniably Peace Walker and Guns of the Patriots. And Guns of the Patriots is the one for
I know,
plebeians like you. I said it.
I bought that for you. Do you remember that?
No, you didn't.
Physically, I did.
MGS4?
Yeah.
No, you did not.
I did.
It was a birthday present. It was a Christmas present from my sister. Thank you.
No, I bought it.
Because she didn't have the money for it, and she bought it for me, and she didn't need to. I don't know what you got me. I don't think you got me anything.
I know I did. I did.
You got me Titanfall.
That
was years later, though.
I'll leave it at this.
Right?
I knew it was Guns of the Patriots. That's all.
Very well. Guns of the Patriots is the one that's going to take the most work, right? Because there's not another version of it. Now, granted, there's reports that there was a version that ran on the Xbox 360 before they secured an exclusivity deal. So I guess there's some work already done, but I'm sure that's not finished work. You know, there's still probably levels that are incomplete in that version. So maybe we can kind of Frankenstein monster duct tape together this kind of thing to get it to kind of function. But at the end of the day, like with every PlayStation 3 game, it takes a lot of work to get something off of that console. And so it's going to take some time to get that to work. And they're saying, hey, we heard you. Not up to standards. We're going to meet standards next time. That's good. I appreciate that, especially with games that are more complex.
Konami's definitely entered into its era of like, let's try and do good now.
We're trying to do our redemption arc here.
Yeah,
you know, we're trying to fix it right. And that's what brings me to the next part of this conversation, Connor. What happens after Delta, Snake Eater?
Well,
I think Delta is the branding for the remakes. And you probably just stick with that, probably. Yeah. Where do you go from there?
At that point, the initial thing would be 4. But if they're doing like remaking that.
Why would they remake 4 first?
Because it's the least. I guess they could make 1 and 2. My main issue is that
you go to 1. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they're covering the whole like we'll do it in you assume they're doing it in the next volume. Like the article kind of says, they never say.
I'm not talking the volume collections. I'm talking Delta remakes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
which is why I'm saying like if they already are doing their job of allowing people to have access to Guns of the Patriots, it would make sense that they'd make one of those older games. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think one you've always called for as being the one that needs to remake the most.
Yeah.
And one that makes the most sense. I think they might go with 2.
1 or Peace Walker.
Peace Walker. That's the other one. I think 2 would be up in the running because of how people consider it. People regard that as like alongside 3, which they kind of just break the mold to go after and remake that one first because it's the most popular one. 2's like right behind that, isn't it? As like the one most well regarded. Definitely, I think made more money initially than the first one.
It's one of those first 3 games for sure. Everything after that, a mixed bag. To me, you have 2 ways of going about it. You get 3 first out of the way, yeah, sure, right? Just to prove that you can do it. And also, that's probably the easiest one to remake because it's the most recent one, right? Mm-hmm. So you're meeting fandom and ease of creation because it's the most modern, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants you to remake a 4. That's not as exciting as a 3 or a 2 or a 1. But 1 is kind of upheld as like this precious gaming icon idol thing. So like taking any liberties with that, your first round out the gate is scary. You have a higher potential of pissing off the fan base with that. I think they cut their teeth and they prove their point with Snake Eater, and then they jump back to 1 and say, here's Metal Gear Solid Delta, Shadow Moses. I hate it. Too many words now. It's too many. It was already a wordy franchise.
Yeah.
Now it's way too wordy. So now you call it what? Metal Gear Solid Delta, probably Shadow Moses.
Yeah.
I would assume. Or, I don't know. Rex? Liquid Snake?
That's shorter.
Fox Die, something like that. This is still a semi-title that didn't exist before.
Yeah. Well, in that way, it would make sense if they're doing it in like the progression of Metal Gear Solid mainline games of like now, 3's obviously in the past, big boss, then going into 1.
Well, Peace Walker would be next, and then 5.
That's true. But like mainline though, let's be honest, most people when they think Metal Gear Solid don't think Peace Walker. I know it's good. I know it's quality.
You should.
It's one of the best, but that's not what most people think.
It is a mainline game, though.
Come on.
It's a mainline game.
It's a mainline game to you because you're a Metal Gear Solid fan.
When Metal Gear Solid 5 doesn't make sense if you didn't play Peace Walker.
So, well, who had the ability to play Peace Walker for most of that time?
Whoever bought a PlayStation Portal,
exactly.
Which is a lot of people.
Not comparable to the audience who would play Metal Gear Solid in general. PlayStation heads. Those who play.
PSP sold something crazy like
it did, yeah.
Like 100, like close to 100 million units or something.
The PSP did. How much did Peace Walker sell?
Oh, not 100 million units, but so it was well received game, and there's more versions of Peace Walker floating around than Guns of the Patriots. So there is a world that we live in where Peace Walker is actually played more than Metal Gear Solid 4. I don't think we live in that world, but there's a chance. Play Peace Walker. It's fucking good.
Good.
It doesn't matter. I'm going to make you play it one day anyway.
I played it before.
Did you beat it?
Nope.
Oh, we're gonna.
Okay.
It's a very emotional ending. Very emotional.
I know spoilers.
Anyways. And also I think it'd be more interesting to do for Volume 2 right? They're probably going to do Peace Walker 4 and 5, right? And it's probably going to be both 5, Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain, right? That's going to be an easy piece of work to get done, right? I think it'd be interesting if you threw in Portable Ops, which is a very unrepresented Metal Gear game. Not exactly considered canon, because Kojima didn't direct it, but it is the closest thing to canon. He worked on it, like, narratively a little bit, but it wasn't... It's not really like a Hideo Kojima game like Peace Walker is.
No one associates it with it.
Yeah, and there's like some lore. There's some lore in that with like Gray Fox and stuff that just feels kind of fan fiction-y. So, Anyways, but I think it'd be cool to throw that in there as well. Where's I going with that? So yeah, I think you do one of two things with remake series: is you go and you recreate the first one, or you recreate Peace Walker. And with either of those titles, to bring them up to modern standards, you have to change gameplay. You have to change environments. You have to take liberties with it from a gameplay perspective. Now, I think the narratives you don't fucking touch at all. Yeah. But the environments, you're going to have to build out Shadow Moses more. You're going to have to make the environments bigger. You're going to have to introduce things like first-person aiming and crouch walking and prone crawling and things like that. So I think you go through and you make a couple of remakes. You probably go all the way through 4. I don't think 5 needs a remake ever. But I think you do remake I think you remake 1 through 4 and Peace Walker. From there, Connor, you try and make a new Metal Gear Solid? Or a new Metal Gear something Metal Gear branded at all?
Honestly, I think so, because
at that rate, you're talking, what, over a decade from now?
And nuts. I mean, they might even do it earlier than that. I mean, we had Rising Revengeance come out back in the day.
Oh, God, put Rising Revengeance in a collection, please.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, that was cool. That was able to stand on its own.
Yeah.
So they obviously can't do things with Solid Snake anymore and all the convoluted things like Metal Gear Solid's associated with, but you can still make it in Metal Gear Solid world with the characters, Raiden particularly.
We can go forward.
Yeah.
You know, we in real life are further than anything that happens in the Metal Gear saga.
Yeah.
Because I think, if memory serves, Guns of the Patriots is the most modern game, and I think that game happened in 2015.
Are you talking about mainline?
Yeah.
Ones? Okay. Yeah.
I don't think there was anything. I think even if you include the spinoff stuff like Acids and stuff, I don't think any of those are like super in the future.
Oh, like Revengeance included?
Oh, Revengeance. Well, isn't that like 2018 or some shit like that?
I'm trying to remember. That's why I was like looking it up. God, I just get pull up the charts. I'm like, Jesus. At a certain point, it gets so convoluted, and you're just like, what is this?
I'll just make it easier.
Oh, do you have it something like that?
I'm just going to hit the Google. What year does Metal Gear Rising Revengeance take place in?
Look at that.
Boom, 2018.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
When is Guns of the Patriots? Like 2016?
15?
Yeah.
I think it's 15.
Okay. Yeah, we're past that.
Yeah, we're well past that. So, like,
no cyborg ninjas either.
There's no need to return to those characters, but it would be cool to return to that world. And then what do you do with that? I think telling a new story and just saying, hey, the idea of a Metal Gear exists here. You still have to make it super like political and like I think there are hallmarks of the franchise you have to uphold. But I'm not. And if this is assuming Delta Snake Eater is a hit, this is assuming whatever they do after that is a hit. And the small liberties that because they're going to take more and more liberties as they continue down this path, right?
You say that.
As long as they keep the fan base happy as we keep going, I think they can restore enough faith to where we're like, okay, we're cool, we're fine. Especially, and I don't think this will happen, but especially if Kojima ever steps out and says, "Hey, man, thumbs up, I'm cool, they can take it."
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I don't know. They tried to milk it back in the day. They clearly failed, especially because it was right on the back of Hideo Kojima's controversy of leaving.
Yeah. And Survive was trash.
Yes, and Survival was, Jesus, very bad.
Very bad. I saw some gameplay of that recently. It's impressive how bad it looks.
Yeah.
It looks like shit. No, like graphically looks like shit. How are you in the same engine, using the same models, using the same map, and you look like garbage? How did that happen?
That's why it was so surprising. And so, if they're able to get this off the ground, I don't think it's really a doubt in my mind that they're going to continue with it. They're doing it with Silent Hill as well. You know, of course, it's not as hard line of a narrative that they need structure around.
Yeah.
Or have a guy who's like, this is a Hideo Kojima game. None of the Silent Hills are like that.
It's you don't have an auteur behind it, you know.
But
Metal Gear is a more complicated story.
But still, they don't want to just sit on their IPs and just say, well, let's do remakes of what already came before. They want to do more. And they seem to have investment.
They can live off the remakes for a little while, though.
They would, and yeah, they could. But eventually,
I don't think so much with Silent Hill. I think Silent Hill 2, maybe even 1 gets a remake, and then from there, just give us a new Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You would think, right? And then, I don't know, make a Castlevania at some point. You know, but like, let's be honest, the cash cow is Metal Gear.
Yeah.
And that one, it needs to be held as precious, you know? Because...
by people like you,
yeah,
you're a, dick rider.
Come this fucking January, Connor, you're gonna play the best fucking video game ever made. You're gonna look at it with an objective eye, and you're gonna play it and enjoy it, and you're gonna be like, you know what? As a mature gamer, not some fucking plebeian you played when you played it when you were 15. You're gonna be like, you know what, Tavin, you're right. This is the greatest game ever made.
You know, Tavin. For the record of everybody else. He played this when he was a kid. So by that same stroke...
But I played it as a grown man.
But he's still riding on those coattails of that childhood. Still going. It's going to end. Hey, Tavin, sometimes you got to put it up on the coat rack and just go get a new coat.
So here's the thing, Connor. I'm going to make you play the original Snake Eater. And then Delta Snake Eater is going to come out shortly after that. Are you going to play Delta Snake Eater? Because you didn't play Dead Space.
I did not. I don't know.
And it sounds like Dead Space did more than what Delta's doing.
It entirely depends on what's happening at that time.
Yeah.
As always seems to be the case with this podcast. You know, things change all the time. Games got to be played.
I'm going to make you play it.
This guy.
Yeah. And you know what, Connor? You know what brings this whole conversation all the way around?
What's that?
If they do a Metal Gear Solid 3 PlayStation 5 Pro, I'm gonna buy that. I'm gonna get it.
I just called you a dick rider, didn't I?
I mean, I got to, right?
You want to.
If they paint it green and have him doing the salute on it or some shit, you know?
You want to try and phrase it like it's a requirement at that point, but you know it's not. You just want to ride that.
I want that collector's edition, but it's all sold out and it sucks.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it might come back on again.
It was okay. It wasn't cool. It was okay. It
You're,
was neat.
you're just chill, so you'll buy it regardless of how cool
I would
it
like
is.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for it.
Well, Snake Eater's the best video game ever made, Connor. So why wouldn't I want
Keep saying that.
all the great memorabilia for it?
I don't know. Why would you?
I want a tattoo of the original Snake Eater cover with the him hiding behind the tree and the orange and all that. I want that on my back.
This guy's saying all of this stuff. Never played Rising Revengeance. Never cut things in half at great speeds in great quantities.
I don't have to play Rising Revengeance to know Snake Eater's a better game.
Sure. Yeah. And then you also have no balls and no. You're like the tip of your dick's gone. Not like foreskin, but like the tip of your dick.
What are you talking about?
I'm just saying
Did you cut your dick off?
You're emasculated. I said you're emasculated, which is why you would have an opinion like that.
What are we talking about now?
I'm saying you're wrong because Rising Revengeance is better. It's cooler. On that alone,
That's probably cooler. It's probably cooler.
It's also fun. It's also just fun.
Oh yeah. It looks a lot of fun. I want to play Rising Revengeance. Got fucking
a lot
forced stealth sections in it that don't look very entertaining or fun.
Just bullshit. Just say fuck it. Just say fuck it.
Just say fuck it. Cut them.
Go through.
Just cut them up.
Yeah.
Cut them all up.
Nothing stopping you.
That game could use a remake.
It could.
Cut more things in more ways.
With more particle effects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or just make a second one. I'd rather have that.
I don't want to see these characters ever again.
You're such a fucking...
I want them to live in what they live in, and that's it. You know.
You want them to live happily, don't you?
Me? Hopefully, one day.
You don't get that.
Why not?
Get that? Because there's a give and a take. And
Yeah.
when you shill so much for this game franchise, you're going to have to get something taken from it.
Am I shilling for it?
I'm going to say you are.
Oh, just because you don't like it when I'm a fan of things.
Well, no, it's a way to make people who watch this make it seem like you shill for it rather than just be a reasonable fan, which he's not.
Whatever. You're gonna come out here and say that like fucking Dark Souls 2 is better or some shit, and it's definitively not.
Have you fought the old Iron King?
I don't need to know
Uh-huh.
to know that the end is the peak boss fight of all time. Pinnacle of stealth action.
Pinnacle stealth action. Yeah, I can concede to that. That part I'll agree with.
Isn't it crazy how good Phantom Pain looks? Have you ever seen? Because we're coming up like the 9th anniversary of Phantom Pain just passed or whatever. So there's a lot of gameplay clips of that game and so forth. It's crazy how good that game looks.
Yeah. It didn't capture people's hearts the same way, but
This
it
is
looked
my
good.
thing. We don't need any more upgrades. We
No.
don't need any more technical upgrades. Yeah, sure, things can look better. We don't need them.
Not for Metal Gear, certainly.
Yeah. Battlefield 3 still looks good.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Battlefield is coming back to its roots, so maybe we'll have something like Battlefield 3 more. Don't fucking sigh. Shut up.
I mean, it was always the inferior shooter.
It never was, actually.
It always was.
It was the more unique than any Call of Duty game since then has been.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
I don't know about all
I
that.
agree. It is.
Have you ever heard about this thing called the Warzone, Connor? The Warzone.
Yeah, I wonder what it aped off for that.
You get to play as Nicki Minaj in the Warzone,
And
Connor.
then clap your ass.
Hopefully.
I just assume.
Have you seen what they're doing in Black Ops 6? They're doing wild things in Black Ops 6 that we won't mention on this podcast, but they're doing wild things. Have you seen it?
The hostage taking?
Yeah.
Oh, whispering sweet nothings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to call it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been intense. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that has been your newest episode of the Two Penny Games Cast. Of course, remember every week we come to you Monday afternoons, twitch.tv/2pennygames, and Tuesday mornings, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Remember that there is a review for which one? Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2 that we're about to get into right now. And also remember that there is an Astrobot review on the channel, youtube.com/@2pennygames once again. So make sure you go check all of that out, click on all of that. And until next time, have a great time. And Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, friends. Till
What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a TwoPennyGames review. This time, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, sitting here with my good friend, co-host, and lead reviewer. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
Some people would say 40,000, but 40K, I think that works.
It's a lot of words. It's a lot of words.
40K, that's simple.
It's simple. Real simple, simple.
Most people call it that.
Connor, you've been playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. See, long word. Long title.
Just say Space Marine 2. Then.
Space Marine 2. Well, you've been playing Space Marine 2. Well, you got to say it for your intro here.
I do, yes.
Yeah. I might cut that short, too, actually, because TikTok, it's a lot of seconds, a lot of seconds.
True.
Anyways, you've been playing Warhammer. I have not. Have you beaten Warhammer?
I have.
You
the main
have?
campaign. I played a little bit of the Eternal War mode, which is just regular multiplayer, and one operations mission. I wish I did more of that, but I kind of wanted to play it with friends, and I couldn't get together with any until yesterday to play that, and so my experience is limited. But I still have enough to say about it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very excited to get into it. So why don't you go ahead and take it away, my friend, with your Warhammer review.
Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is a great game. So, as someone who played the first game not that long ago, maybe about 2 years, as a fan of 40k and knowing that it was one of the better 40k games, I went and played it. And it's a bit of a dated game in some ways, but it's a very fun game. And so when this got announced and it was looking even prettier and better than the first one was, I had pretty high hopes. And this improved upon the first game in literally every single aspect, which is pretty impressive. Well, I guess not one, kind of. So the thing that had the most impact on me with this game is this is coming at a time when we've had some conversations about missing the old days. We might be nostalgic and, it might not be as good as it is, but I remember there was a time, we all do, we both do here, of when you had a single-player game, it maybe wasn't that long, so you can get done with it and have a fun time with it, and then you had a multiplayer mode that you can sink however much time you wanted into it. And that model had kind of gone by the wayside. Typically, you're getting either a multiplayer game or a single-player game. And this is one of those games that the creators themselves said that one of their goals was to kind of make games like that. The more, as I just described, games. And not only does it do it, but it does it well. As I said before, the campaign, which I beat, it's very short. So short, in fact, that it just comes in with fun gameplay, with some fun enemy types, and before they can get boring, you're out of there, And that's pretty good, because the narrative isn't much to be, remarked about. The first one was actually better. This is the only way it was, and a large part of that is because it's a sequel, and it does come back from the first one, 100 years after the first one. Space Marines can basically live forever, so that makes sense. The character in the first game, he was a part of a military group, basically, that has very strict rules, but he kind of bent them. He, was a little bit more rebellious, but still in kind of like a, I'm a military officer kind of way. He ends up getting screwed over, and so this game is him kind of learning to gain trust in his brothers again. Because as you are a Space Marine, you're a part of a brotherhood, and that brotherhood betrayed him in the first game. And so it kind of lends to him not having enough of a character because they're spending so much time dealing with his strife carried over from the first game and him trying to establish a connection with his wary team members. And so you don't get to know the characters as well as you should have been able to know them. But thankfully, it doesn't really spend a lot of time focusing on this, except like when you're riding elevators and talking to your teammates and having short cutscenes. And so what you're dealing with for the most part,
this game brought back riding elevators?
Yeah, there are a lot of elevators.
Oh my
a lot of
God,
them.
yes.
Yes. Oh, you got to go from one place to the other, Tavin. In fact, there's one moment, and this is very 40k, since things are so big, you can take maybe an hour to walk from, that's actually more than an hour to walk from the end of a ship to the other end.
What?
And so, yeah, because scale is big in 40k. And so there's a moment where you go on an elevator ride, and this is kind of the style of 40k that seeps into the game in all the good ways, which is that you go on this elevator, you have a little talk with your guys, and then it goes to black until you're on to the next area. It pops up and says 40 minutes later, and then your elevator arrives at the next location. So, it depicts things like that in the 40k universe very well. It's, grim dark, as it's called, tone and setting. And it, does... It translates this very well with great looking, character designs, environmental designs. The game's extremely pretty, super well detailed, and I think it kind of results in the long load times that the game can have. I know even Phil had some loading that he had to go through on the PS5, on the PC, which is, mine's pretty advanced. I also had a lot of problems with that. And yet, that's kind of a small issue. But going back to the multiplayer, the campaign, really, the main enemy you fight are alien-like enemies. Alien as in the alien from the movie Alien. Swarm-like Tyranids, which are just, coming over the hills, charging to your position. And typically, in these situations, you've got to fight them off. And this game makes use of something called the swarm mechanic, where you have a large mass of enemies on the screen at any given time. Sometimes they're, running right past you, and you just interact with shooting them, and they, die, but no substantial thing really happens. But most of the time, the horde's coming at you. And so it adds this horde element where you're, for a pretty long period of time, depending on how well you're doing it, fighting off against this encroaching enemy before it gets to you and starts tearing through to you, and you got to switch out into your melee. Which, speaking of the guns, when you're shooting rounds into these large groups of enemies, thankfully, all of the guns feel unique and are very fun to shoot. They feel like they have heavy impacts to them. Whether you're shooting a machine gun that shoots basically, 50 caliber rounds, it really just, has great sound design that makes you feel like you're shooting a weapon of that caliber. And, you have your sidearms as well, your melee weapons that are really fun to get into the fray with. Though the melee weapons and the pistols, your sidearms really, they're kind of lacking. I kind of wish there was more variety. It's kind of strange because you get extra weapons that you don't have access to in the campaign, but you have access to them in the multiplayer. And so it feels like it was kind of a missed opportunity to create more diversity in the amount of weapons you have for something like melee. For example, in the multiplayer, you have a shield that kind of operates like Reinhardt's shield from Overwatch in the sense that it takes a lot of damage and it's able to defend people behind you. It's not in the campaign. Neither is the Power Fist, which kind of sends out shockwaves of attacks when you're punching with it. And it doesn't really seem like there's any reason why these weapons shouldn't be in the campaign. But I guess, for balancing purposes, maybe. I don't fucking know. They decided to not do that. And so a bit of a weird decision on that part, especially when you're so lacking in melee weapons. And pistols, you only have 3 to choose from. And they're nice and diverse, as all the weapons are, but only 3. You feel like they could have done more to have more interesting sidearms. Which, to that end, the future of the game seems to have some sort of a roadmap planned out. It says that it's going to add new enemies. Whether this comes in the forms of new special enemies or an entire new faction is hard to say. Probably just specific types of enemies, since that's a lot easier to do. But in terms of what they have coming down the line, new game modes, new cosmetics, I'm assuming new weapons as well. They have a new game mode called a Horde mode coming out. And so the game does a really good job, the developers do a really good job in laying out a groundwork for what Space Marine is going to be down the line. Because due to the fact that they made a multiplayer game, they don't want to occupy that live service game model, entirely reliant on it. And so they have things like the campaign to, equal that out. But it's clear that they're going to be putting attention into this game down the road, which I'm interested to see what they do exactly with that. But to get back to game feel, you play as a super soldier, a heavily armored one, and you feel like it. From your footsteps to the way that you rip into people with melee and do cool executions on them, interact with the environment as simple as like moving something out of the way. It has weight to it. You feel like a super soldier. And the fact that in the world you'll pass by normal soldiers and they bow down to you, it really does give this sense of awe and feeling like a badass that not only translates to just, you walking around, but also into the gameplay. Beyond that, I actually wrote things down for once.
I like that. You got to check the notes.
I do. Yeah, to get more into the specifics of, first of all, going back to the campaign, it has another type of enemy. They're called the Chaos Space Marines. They come in like the half part of the game, and at a certain point you deal with the Tyranids, and you have them kind of be the final big enemy. They are not as good as the Tyranids. They don't make use really of the swarm mechanic. They're a lot more, enemies that you shoot from a range against. They have powerful ranged attacks, which I saw many of the reviews say that it makes the game a lot more difficult, because they're constantly peppering you from afar while you're having to deal with enemies running up to you on melee. I never found them to be too hard to handle, but they certainly weren't as entertaining to fight as hordes of, melee, aliens, and, while other ones are shooting at you and dealing with hordes of enemies. You just don't have as much to juggle between when you fight this other enemy type. And the foot soldiers, they don't come in such a wide, a wide count. So you're only fighting, a couple enemies that are taking a bit more damage than the average Tyranid. Maybe they have shields. And so it kind of makes it, you get more bogged down in the melee combat with them, which isn't a problem, but it just, by comparison to the other enemy type they had in the game, just doesn't hit as well. And so you do really feel yourself starting to be like, okay, I want to go back to the Tyranids when you're playing that campaign. But once again, you only spend a little bit of time in that campaign. So by the time you're, pretty much done, the game's over, which is always nice. Interesting thing, by the way, is that it recommends you play on veteran mode, which is the hard mode, rather than the normal one. So I ended up doing just that, and it made it a lot more fun.
There's a number of games that do that.
Yeah, I can't really think of them off the top of my head.
Halo does it.
Halo.
Yeah, Halo always says you should play on heroic. I think the Doom games have a recommended difficulty that's on the higher level.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see them doing that.
There's a couple other that say, hey, we would, this is normal, but like we want you. The intended difficulty is here.
Yeah,
so not a unique thing, but it's always fun when it pops up. I think I always think it's appreciated.
And I played on normal with Phil. By the way, playing the campaign, I guess this is my biggest criticism of it. Actually, you know what? Originally, my criticism was going to be that it's kind of built in a way where it's made to be played with friends, which is nice because I had the most fun when I was playing with Phil. But on my own, I felt like I died a lot of times when I should have been alive, and that's a large part due to the fact that the way you operate in the game, you go down, your teammates can pick you up, but if you go down again, you get a mortal wound, which means if you go down the next time, you die. And so sometimes I would go into combat encounters where I'd gone through the entire game, the entire mission, dying twice at different intervals, and by the time I died during like the big final moment, I only had basically one life left, and so I just die. And it kind of feels like, oh, I'm supposed to have like other team members there to pick up the slack in those kinds of situations. Now, the thing I found out through operations mode is that in the game, there are these crates that are blended very well into the environment. So well, in fact, I didn't know you could destroy them, and that's how you get things like extra health items. That's where most of them lie. Extra ammo as well, but more importantly, the health. And I realized in that moment, if I had done that, my entire issue with this would have been curbed. So
get good.
And I did get good.
There you go.
Did get good.
There you go.
So it is able to make itself be a campaign that, while it has a heavy multiplayer focus, you can do it on your own pretty well. Next, I'll go into operations, which is the thing I had the least involvement in playing, which I'm disappointed in because it's very cool. They play like campaign missions. They're actually kind of set up alongside the campaign. When new operations get released in the future, which once again, they've already had a roadmap planning that out, I'll be interested to see what they do going forward, because it is limited to being alongside that campaign. But it's very cool. I think of Vermintide when I play it, in the sense of it's set up like that game is. Some of you might get a more relatable comparison with Left 4 Dead. You get, some random generated, enemies that are thrown into a pre-generated map. And so it makes every single gameplay experience a little bit different. Sometimes you'll get ambushed by basically the stealth enemy that the Tyranids have. Sometimes you'll fight the other enemy where otherwise you would be fighting Tyranids. And so it adds that little bit of, what's going to happen next during this playthrough. That always makes subsequent ones entertaining. And there is progression in operations mode. You have perks that you unlock that make it, a little bit easier to go up to higher difficulty missions, because I can't remember the grade at which it goes on, but it can get pretty difficult. Even the minimal one, you can feel at times getting overwhelmed pretty easily. And so those perks can kind of help make that a bit smoother of a transition. It has a class system rather than just you have two weapons, a main ranged weapon, a sidearm, and a melee weapon. You instead just have classes that have certain features centered around them, and these classes are also found in the Eternal War mode. You have ones like your shield guy who has a shield and a melee weapon and just a pistol. They serve as your like frontline fighter. You have your heavy class, which is they have access to weapons that in the campaign are just ones you pick up. You use them like a heavy bolter, which is basically just your minigun equivalent. You use up the ammo and then you toss it to the side. The heavy class allows you to use those weapons, but as the base weapon, so you continuously use it. So it occupies that heavy class. You have your sniper. You have your vanguard who go ahead and kind of scout and can handle themselves and get out of situations pretty well. You have your assault unit who has a jetpack and they can come down and smash into the earth, into your enemies. Very melee focused class, and so you choose these ones when you go into operations mode, and it has a nice each person has their role and they fulfill it to the best of their needs, to the best of their abilities, and so playing around with team comp would be pretty interesting, especially when you get to the higher difficulty of operations, because, like I said, I only played a little bit, and it was the lower level of difficulty, but I can tell it'll get hard, to whatever like I said, I can't remember the grade of difficulty that the game provided. But you also get cosmetics that you unlock, which is always nice. The cosmetics, though, the cool thing about 40K is that you have Space Marine chapters. And the cool thing in this game is that you have, armor paint jobs to make them look like that, but each faction kind of has their own style to it, and sometimes their own style of armor, their own fetishes that they attach to themselves.
I was gonna say, talk to me about this part, because surely this game would have a customization, but whenever I look at a Space Marine, they all kind of look the same. It's just the amount of noise that's on their blue outfit. So is it actual in-depth customization, or how does that look or work?
Well, see, that depends, because the chapters in this one you play as the Ultramarines. They're the poster boy. And as poster boys typically are, the most boring, the most generic. And so it kind of waylays those more interesting factions in slew of, promoting their poster boy. And that shows in the cosmetics. So, for example, my favorite faction are the Space Wolves. They're Viking-like enemies. They have things like wolf pelt cloaks, wolf helmets, different kind of animal parts like runic armor as well. Just slightly different styles like that. You have the Dark Angels, who are a knightly monastic order, and they have hooded robes on their power armor. They have a lot of crosses, a lot of incense holders, which you know what those are? They're
the smell things.
Yeah. And they have that cool knight aesthetic to them. You have the Mongol-like tribe in the form of the White Scars.
Oh, okay.
You have a lot of different things that you can add cool cosmetics in them, and I think they're going to do that down the line.
Now, I'm sorry. These are things that you're taking into things like the multiplayer and the operations mode, but not the campaign?
Yes. The campaigns,
Okay.
You're just Ultramarine.
Your set characters. So do co-op companions, they take over other characters in the squad?
Yeah, that's the thing. The operations goes alongside the main campaign, so you actually see the guys who are the operations guys, the generic ones.
Okay.
And they all have their own characters and whatnot, and you just put different skins on them. And, they're not ones who have a lot of character. They have character, but it's not so much that they're having lots of dialogue and you're really getting to know.
And these are who
these
your
people are.
co-op guys are playing as?
Yes.
So it's the equivalent of Halo, player 1 plays Master Chief, and then 2 will play Arbiter, and 3 will just play an Elite.
Yeah, well, in the main campaign, each of your squad mates, the main characters, look slightly different in various ways. In terms of the multiplayer, they just look different. They have very specific designs because they are their own characters as well, but you can customize them individually for each class.
Okay.
And
in campaign, who were your friends playing as?
Your other Space Ultramarine guys.
In the squad. So,
In
the
your squad,
characters in the story.
Yes.
Okay.
The only
was the
time that
question.
changes is in operations and the
Where you play as
multiplayer
your
mode.
created character.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, effectively your created character.
Or your customized
Yes,
character.
customized character.
Okay, yeah.
Different skins.
Is it presets of heads or whatever that you're playing as, or is everybody
Yeah.
just helmeted up?
No, presets of they look individually. They look unique. The base models.
So it's you can play Asian dude, black dude, white dude.
Yeah. Or then you can just go into the random armor and color paints and whatnot
And then
that you unlock.
throw a helmet on or something.
Yeah, which, like I said, they didn't take advantage of other factions that much. So there's nice cosmetics, not only just colors and decals and whatnot, but it's tiny little character alterations to your helmet or your main armor body, the main part of your armor or whatnot.
Gotcha.
But they could use a lot more. And that's something they'll do down the line. But for right now, I'm like, well, you might want to put more in there so you can have more to do in these multiplayer modes. Because the last thing I'll touch on is the Eternal War mode, your traditional multiplayer. It's very fun. That's the most reminiscent of the old days of multiplayer, where you just hop in, you play, a simple multiplayer game. This one has a bit of structure to it. Those classes I was talking about before in operations, they're in Eternal War mode. There can be each position can be held by 2 players, and so there is a bit of team structure to it. But for the most part, each one just has pros and cons. They counter certain units more than others and whatnot. But it's not very restrictive, and so you just do whatever you feel is the most fun to play, and you just go in there and you scrap with people. You trade a lot. It kind of reminds me of Halo. Do you remember when Halo? There were a lot of moments where you're not exactly like always going on big kill sprees. You're usually like killing somebody in melee, and then you're the next one to fall.
Getting third party,
so yeah. This one, it plays like that, and so you jump back in super quick, and so you're right back in the fight.
I like things like that.
Yeah, that's why it's super fun, and you feel like that badass Space Marine in the campaign translated over to multiplayer, but everyone else is also in that.
God, this game seems like so much fun.
It's literally just fun.
Yeah.
It is a game that pretty much anybody can pick up and entertain themselves with. And, not many games can do that nowadays.
So now, Connor,
yeah,
you keep talking about how this game feels like an older game, but still modern. I would assume it still feels good to play, stuff like that. Yeah. But it feels like in how it's structured, campaign, multiplayer, co-op, mission type, third mode, right? They've laid out some type of ground plan, some type of like forward thinking plan of like adding more cosmetics or more game modes and things like that right there. We live in the age of the live service.
Yeah.
We live in the age of a games of service game. Do you see this game having legs? Do you see this game having a future? Or do you see this game being a very niche thing that you'll have a dedicated couple hundred, maybe 1,000 plus players, but it's going to be a small pool that just kind of limps along?
It really comes down to audience capture in the form of the modes that you can play and the cosmetics. Not only in just extra operations missions, but also in the Eternal mode, you have your typical team deathmatch. You have your capture the zone, and then the other one, I'm struggling to remember what the difference of it was. I think it's like you're pushing their line.
Okay.
I can't remember. Fuck. I played the least of that one, but it's only those 3. And they're nice, but in terms of longevity, they need to add on to that, which, like I said, it seems like they're going to. It's a matter of can they do it in time when they still have people's attention. I think it's very possible because, like I said, it's just a natural, fun, get in if you want and get out multiplayer mode.
Because they have some attention. They have some.
Yeah,
like it's on my TikTok feed. Yeah. It's like, hey, people are like, hey, this is like a fun, like old Gears of War style game, and I'm enjoying it, like type thing. So like, it's definitely like, I think this is one of the bigger looks that a Warhammer game has ever gotten. And it certainly,
probably.
Yeah, and it certainly looks good and it looks fun. I'm just curious as to like, is this a fun for the weekend type thing, and then everybody will move on, or is this something that might have some legs?
It might have some legs.
It might.
Oh yeah, definitely might. No doubt about that. I can't say for certain that it's going to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's my question: is I assume you're in the same boat with me with a Helldivers 2, for example.
Yeah.
I think these two games are kind of comparable in that sense. Whereas, like, as soon as Helldivers 2 has a big major drop, I'm going back to it, and I'm going to check out what's new and all these things like that. Does Space Marine 2 feel like it could have a big major drop that could bring back?
Oh, yeah.
Not just you, but a fan base.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, because, like, it seems like they're pretty ambitious for what they're exactly doing down the line. Since right now, like I said, they're doing the whole new Horde mode.
Yeah.
They undoubtedly have more modes for operations coming in, more levels. And those have a lot of replayability due to the perk system and the unlock system of, gaining different types of weapons and whatnot. Really, it depends on how much they expand that and how quickly they can. The reason why I think it has legs is because they do have an idea. Something like Helldivers 2, since you bring it up, they kind of were just in a spot where they didn't know it was going to blow up as much as it did, and so they weren't super prepared for it. These guys seemed like they did, so it seems like they have some skin of the game in wanting it to continue.
Well, it's also not successful to the level of Helldivers 2.
It's not, no.
So a bit of apples and oranges, but I see your point.
Yeah.
I mean, I brought the comparison in the first place, anyways. But yeah, okay. Well, it certainly seems fun. I wish I had time to play it, man.
Yeah, you would enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, I really feel like I would, but yeah.
Bad news about it.
What's that?
This is actually I was thinking about, if I play more Operations, I could say this is an amazing game.
Okay.
But what certainly prevents it from being that right now is the Eternal War mode is not cross-platform. And it advertises itself as it. It could do it in campaign, it could do it in Operations, but not Eternal War mode. So I'm guessing they'll add that later on when they can, but it's very strange why they can't have that.
Got to be something with the servers and the way, because it's correct me if I'm wrong, this is like a numbers-based thing. So, like, do you join a faction or something? Or?
Yeah, you have your basic Space Marines, and then you have your Heretic Astartes, who are the traders, and they have their own cool style to them. They don't... Side tangent, they have like very little, I don't think really any cosmetics available to them. So that's another
These
side.
are other
really
players you're fighting, though?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you join a side? You pick a side?
No, you automatically get put in one. Like, is that what you're asking? Or
yes, because I assume this is a game mode in which like there's a state of the war type thing, and it pushes and pulls based off of players. No. Oh, okay. Well, then I don't know what this is. Then.
Yeah. It's just factions. You know. So why'd you bring that up? What was the?
Well, is it like it? I don't understand the concept of this mode. Then.
Oh, it's just like Eternal War. That one.
Yes.
It's just classic multiplayer. Classic get in, get out, fun multiplayer. You
know, but it's just not but there's no like overarching system like you're pushing this front of the war or anything or this faction's winning, this faction's not type thing. Okay. So like are you just always on the Space Marine side and then to the enemy side who to you are the enemies but to them you're the enemies?
Well, the whole other enemy side are like their style is completely different. They look a lot more evil. Like they're the evil.
Okay, but are you hopping between sides?
Yeah. It just randomly puts you. It's like okay, this time you're on the bad guy side.
Gotcha.
Go whatever. You know, it's like
this time you're red team. This time you're blue team.
Yeah, like I said, it's not trying to be reinventing the multiplayer space. They just know what fun multiplayer is, and they're trying to continue with that.
But Operations and Campaign are crossplay. That mode's not.
Yes.
Weird.
Very weird. Yeah. And I tried looking it up, and they never addressed it. It was just like...
Guess they just don't have it yet? Or,
yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, anything else you want to add on to Space Marine 2 before we close it out, buddy?
No, nothing. That's it.
It's a great game. It's an 8 out of 10. Very fun
10,
times.
Yeah.
I wish I had the time to play it. I really do, but I got to move on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
So it goes.
It's very frustrating because it looks a lot of fun and it looks up my alley. So, yeah, I hope one day I'll be able to have some time to play it, but I doubt I will. So, ladies and gentlemen, this, of course, has been your TwoPennyGames review for Space Marine 2. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave your opinions of Space Marine 2 down in the comments below. And until next time, have a great time. Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye.